Welcome back. A reminder of our headlines. A surprise consensus. The G20 meeting in Delhi announces a joint declaration on the first day of the summit, including an agreement over the conflict in Ukraine. And a major disaster in Morocco. More than 1,000 people are killed in a powerful earthquake that struck a densely populated area south of Marrakesh. More now on that story, and the epicenter of that earthquake was in the Atlas Mountains, south of Marrakesh. And the earthquake struck late at night when people were sleeping. There are many remote villages that are difficult to reach, and it could take days before officials know the full scale of the disaster. Well, we can talk now to Caroline Holt, who's the Director of Disaster, Climate and Crises at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Good to talk to you. Thank you for joining us. So your organisation works with teams on the ground in Morocco. What are you hearing from them? What are they telling you?
That's right, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you today. Yes, we work with the National Society, the Moroccan Red Crescent on the ground, which of course is part of our network that spans the globe. The Moroccan Red Crescent, of course, are there on the front line and really sort of part and also have suffered as a result of this earthquake themselves. They are from the local community and they represent the local community, so they themselves have really been on the front line of this. They're telling us about the fear and confusion on the ground. I think that that's to be expected to a great extent in an earthquake or a disaster of this scale and with this impact. But we're also hearing of a lot of people trapped under rubble. We're hearing of a lot of people that have also survived and are very scared and living in fear. And we're making sure that those people are actually moved to a safe space so that they aren't necessarily in harm's way, because there will continue to be aftershocks after an event like this. And those buildings that might have survived the initial impact might not survive any further aftershocks. We're seeing people who really need support with some very basic needs at the minute, with some food, with some shelter, with some safe and clean water. We're also seeing and hearing that the National Society are supporting the government with the initial assessments, and the needs assessments are huge and very complicated just these few hours after the disaster. There's a lot of people requiring immediate first aid. Those that are most severe are being transferred to hospitals, but of course don't forget the health infrastructure will also have been impacted by a disaster of this size.
So it's perhaps a little too early to make a clear assessment on this, but how bad do you think this is? What's the scale of this earthquake, do you think, and the damage it's caused?
Yeah, I think that this is a very severe earthquake, 6.8, and at a fairly shallow depth. We know already that there are many cities that have been impacted, certainly cities and people living in the cities that felt the tremor. But I think more concerning at this point is that in the remote areas and in the mountainous areas, we aren't actually able to reach these people effectively yet. It's very common in an earthquake that roads would be impacted and road routes. So getting traffic through, getting people through in order to support and assess the needs in these remote places will be extremely difficult. We'll be prioritising the access to heavy machinery to really start to clear those roads, but also communication lines will have been impacted too. Electricity lines will have been impacted. So this really does represent a complex and multi-layered disaster in terms of getting hold of people. But the absolute critical nature at the minute is also to reach those people that are still alive, unfortunately under the rubble. That window really only lasts for 2 or 3 days, and we need to make sure that we're prioritising that. And I think we will see over the coming days the real true extent of this particular disaster, but I don't think we've got anywhere near understanding the size of it at this point in time.
So a challenging area to be working in. You said earlier that food, shelter and water is what's needed. What sort of aid are you able to get in at this early stage, and how do you see that progressing?
So, of course, there are some basic stocks that are present in country, and the government, no doubt, will be supporting the affected population with getting those out. The National Society, the Moroccan Red Crescent that I spoke of, is also supporting in that process. So we know that that's happening. The management and dignified management of dead bodies as well is also an absolute priority at a time like this, because unfortunately we do know that there is a significant loss of life. It's also about providing people, as I say, with that basic first aid, but the psychosocial and the mental health impacts of a disaster such as this, especially when you continue to feel the aftershocks, which take you back to that original event, it's really critical that we have support teams on the ground and we're able to assist people not only with the food, water and shelter that we mentioned, but also with their mental health needs and really making sure that people don't have to continue to relive this trauma.
Caroline, really good to talk to you today. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Caroline Holt, the Director of Disaster, Climate and Crises at the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies.